Today we will talk about a very interesting name from the Hebrew Bible, Isaac. Other than being the name of the second of the three patriarchs, Isaac, or Yitzchak in Hebrew, is among only a handful of people in the Tanakh, or the Old Testament, who were named by God himself. And like most names in Hebrew, Yitzchak has a meaning. So what is it? Well, the answer might surprise you, even if you already have some previous knowledge. This is probably the right time to point out that, as usual, our analysis will be faith neutral, based purely on linguistics and the text in the Hebrew Bible. First thing first, this is how the name is written in Hebrew, and again it is pronounced Yitzchak. And if you are an authenticity buff, then it might have sounded during biblical times as Yitzhak. But I'll use the modern pronunciation, which is anyway not too far off. One significant thing that English does not show you, but Hebrew speakers just get immediately, is that the name Yitzchak is a verb relating to events that occurred before Isaac was born and potentially even after. And it's a very basic verb, simply meaning will laugh, for the singular, third person, male, and future. Like most words in Hebrew, Yitzchak is based on a three-letter root, and this root is also used to create several related words. This is important because we will examine those words later to further explore the meaning of the name. As to the individual letters of the root, I'll discuss them one by one at the end of the video. But for now, you can just look at them as mere shapes or symbols, and you'll be able to see for yourself that indeed they appear in both Yitzchak and the related words. Back to the name Isaac in Hebrew. At the beginning of the word, there is the letter Yod, which is not part of the root, and serves here for the conjugation. Okay, he will laugh is clearly not your standard name, but wait, there is more to it than that. As we'll see later, laughter in the Bible is not necessarily what we, modern people, have in mind. To see how and why, let's go over some relevant verses. In Genesis 17:16, God promises 90-year-old Abraham, or Avraham in Hebrew, that he would have a son with his wife Sarah, or Sarah, who was beyond childbearing age. In the very next verse, Genesis 17:17, Abraham is described to fall on the ground, probably in awe, but he also laughed. And look, if we take away that first letter, Vav, we get the name Yitzchak, or Isaac, right there. The letter Vav at the beginning of the word is interesting because it actually converts the original verb will laugh, that is, in the future, to the past, or laughed. I've explained this signature feature of biblical Hebrew a few times on this channel, like in the episode about Genesis 1:3. Later, Sarah, his mother, also laughs. This time, the letter Yod at the beginning is replaced by Tav to create the feminine form of the verb. And again, it's in the third person future tense and sounds Titzchak. Essentially, both parents are doing the same thing, laughing. But since almost all Hebrew verbs are gendered, like in this case, they are written slightly differently. The male version made it to the final name of the newborn son. Also note that there is a converting vav here as well, because Titzchak is in the future, but the action of laughing was in the past. So God named Yitzchak later in the same chapter in Genesis 17:19, seemingly to mark the fact that both his father and mother laughed when they heard he was going to be born. But why was the child eventually named Will Laugh? Abraham and Sarah did their laughing before Isaac was even conceived. Was God expecting him to be a very cheerful person? In other words, why is the name or verb in the future? Well, this might be explained by Genesis 21:6, quoting Sarah's reaction to the birth of her only child. The relevant root appears here twice. The first instance is difficult to decipher. This quote translates literally as laughter made to me God, or in a slightly more conventional word order in English, God made laughter to me. Virtually all English translations understand this to mean that God made Sarah laugh or rejoice, which is by all means a valid translation. However, looking at other verses in the Bible where related words of the same root appear, they often have what we would look at as negative connotation. For example, just 3 verses down the page in Genesis 21:9, the son of Hagar or Hagar is said to be metzachek. This is the same root. The English versions translate this as mocking, making fun of, or just playing with. We can't be sure what exactly happened there and what was this action, metzachek, but it is quite obvious that the son of the servant did something unfavorable, because in reaction to him being metzachek, Sarah demanded that he and his mother would be cast out. There are more such examples of using this root, and their translation often goes along the line of being disrespectful of, ridiculing, or mocking. There isn't really anywhere in the Hebrew Bible where people are cracking jokes and their friends burst laughing. Back to Genesis 21:6, this part of the sentence can also mean that Sarah was complaining against God, and even saying that he was causing her embarrassment. I think you might see shortly why I think that once we look at the second instance of the same root in the other part of the verse, which we are going to do right now. Here is that second instance, and this time it's actually the verb in focus, which is also the Hebrew name of our hero in this video, Yitzchak. This time it is quite apparent that Sarah is saying that anyone who will hear the story about her giving birth at an old age will laugh or giggle in disbelief. Based on that, this is why I tend to read the first part of the verse as a complaint. Sarah might have said, "Look what you've done to me, God." She may have made that remark with a smile, but it's still likely a complaint. So, if my linguistic interpretation is correct, Yitzchak or Isaac is called that way to mean anyone hearing the story of how I was born will chuckle in disbelief, or something similar. Another thing you might find interesting is that Yitzchak is spelled differently in Jeremiah, Amos, and Psalms. The letter tzadi with ts sound is replaced by shin, which here is pronounced like an S. So it's Yitzchak instead of Yitzchak. This version with the letter shin also means ridicule, like in Psalms 2:4, where this fact is even clearer than in the previous examples. Since many verses in Psalms are divided into 2 parts that most often repeat the same idea using different words, it's possible to extract the meaning of Yitzchak from the other verb, yil'ag, or will ridicule. There is another thing I must show you so that you'll have a more complete picture. In Psalms 126:2, a word with the same root, again, in the version with the letter shin, clearly indicates something different, not mocking or ridiculing, but genuine joy. Still, in this case too, there is no laughing from something hilarious. This verse from Psalms allows us to interpret the name Yitzchak as meaning he will rejoice, but in my personal opinion, based on Genesis 21:6, where Sarah is concerned about being mocked by people hearing of her giving birth, the name, after all, probably means he will ridicule. This is because Genesis 21:6 is directly linked to the actual naming, so I'm inclined to give it more weight. One more interesting use of this root is to talk about intimacy. between a husband and a wife. In Genesis 26:8, the king of the Philistines looks out through his window and somehow sees Isaac, the star of this episode, metzachek, or literally laughing, his wife Rebecca, or Rivka. We cannot be exactly sure what the couple were doing, but in that scene, this evidence served as the ultimate indication that Rebecca was not really Isaac's sister, as the latter earlier claimed. Note that the name of Yitzchak and the act he performed are closely related, linguistically wise. It's like Frank is being Frank. Before we wrap things up, let's go over the letters of the root real quick. The first is tzadi. The sound is like that made by ts in facts, its, or cats. The second letter is chet, and its sound is nowhere to be found in English, currently pronounced like J in Spanish. It originally was produced from deep down in the throat, as is still the case in Arabic. Chet is related to H in English. The last letter of the root is kof, which is equivalent to and has the same sound and placement in the alphabet as Q in English. In biblical times, the letter most probably had a guttural sound too, kha, similarly to the official pronunciation in Arabic to this day.